Hi everyone, welcome to Uke Theory with Matt Stead. Today we're going to talk about two of my favourite chord types, suspended and augmented chords. And both of these chords are all about adding movement and texture and resolution to your music. Before we start, I'm going to play a very short 20-second piece of music. It's the introduction to It Never Entered My Mind by Rodgers and Hart, as covered by Miles Davis, and Red Garland came up with this really beautiful piano part. Features some augmented chords and a suspended chord, and if I point them out, you'll notice, see if you can notice the movement that's created by them. Augmented. Augmented. Suspended. It's just a really short clip and just shows that just by adding a couple of these augmented and suspended chords in, it can create something really beautiful. Now, what are suspended chords? We'll deal with suspended first. Now, there are two main types of suspended chords. If anyone ever says just play say a C suspended or a D suspended, that's shorthand for a sus4, which is the most common of the two suspended chords. It's easy peasy. I'm going to show you how these chords are built. Then I'll show you on the melodica keyboard in a minute. So a normal major chord is built around what we call a triad. And a triad just means three notes that make a chord which are built diatonically. And that's just a fancy name for saying we play one note, skip one, play the next one, skip one, play the next one. And suspended chords are often called synthetic chords because if you do this skipping of notes, no matter which note you start on in a scale, you never end up with a suspended chord. They're kind of synthetic man-made chords. And all a suspended chord is rather than playing the middle note of the triad, all you do is you either push it to the up higher in pitch to become a fourth, or you push it lower in pitch to become a second. I'll show you what I mean. So instead of that third, if I change it to a fourth, we now have 1, 4 and 5, the first, fourth and fifth note in a scale. And that's called a C, because we're starting from C, sus4. So if you ever see a C sus4 written, all it means is a C chord with the fourth note instead of the third. So here's our C chord. Instead of this E, I'm going to add an F here. C major, C sus4. It's that simple. And the less common one, a sus2 chord, all we do is instead of the 3, the third, we play the second. 1, 2, 5, and we call that in the key of C would be a C sus2 chord. All right, we've just added the D. Let me show you these on a melodica keyboard, because they're a lot easier to understand sometimes in the context of the notes all being linear. I'll show you what I mean. So here's our normal C major chord. C, E, G. C sus4, I take the third note and I move it up. C sus4. C major. C sus4. C major. A C sus2, I bring it back. C sus2, C major. C sus2. C major. Now, suspended chords, they have a few uses, but the most kind of classically used use of them is to create a really beautiful, smooth transition between two chords and to create a sense of movement in a piece. Now, at the end of a lot of classical musical pieces, we have something called a plague or cadence. It sounds really posh. You don't need to know what that means by now, for now. But all it means, in a way, is that we go from either the fourth chord to the first, or the second to the first without going via the fifth chord. So basically it's like the amen ending at the end of a lot of pieces. Amen. It's got that kind of classic resolution. Now, one of those cadences, and what a really common chord combination to have, is a D minor to a C. And the reason that's really common is that you're just going from the second chord in a scale to the first one. So it's quite a common thing to happen. Now notice that D minor is the same shape as a C major chord moved up. Here's a C major. Here's a D minor. A C major. Notice that kind of amen ending. Now notice what happens if I play a C sus4 in between the D minor and the C. What it does is one of the notes stays the same the whole time, so it creates this movement and transition between the two chords, which is really smooth and beautiful. Have a listen. C major. Oh, sorry, I need to start on D minor. I'll try that again. D minor. C major sus4, C major. I'm going to do that again. D minor. Now notice this finger stays where it is. D minor, C sus4, Isn't that lovely? It creates a really lovely sense of movement between the two chords. Let's try that on the uke, because we're uke players, not melodica players, but hopefully now that's been explained, we can try it out on the uke. So let's play a D minor chord. That's just 2-2-1-0 from nose to toes. And so we really hear the changing of the notes, especially this F note. We want to hear it stay the same on two of the chords and go away for the last chord. What I want you to do is just strum a D minor, but just strum the top 3 strings from nose to toes with your thumb like this. Or just listen if you prefer. Then I'm going to play a C sus4, and that's just a C chord with this note added to the 1st fret, 3rd string down for an F. And then we take it off. So D minor, C sus4, C major. Isn't that lovely? It creates this beautiful kind of resolving smooth chord transition, and it creates movement between the two original chords, which is absolutely lovely. One of my absolute favourite examples of this is from another Rodgers tune, but a completely different Rodgers. This is Rodgers and Hammerstein, and it's from Oklahoma. Oh, what a beautiful morning. There's a really lovely transition going into the chorus where it goes from a C chord, oh what a beautiful, to an F chord, morning. Now if I just play the F on its own, it actually sounds wrong. When I was singing, it kind of clashed with it slightly. I'd have to change the way I sing to, oh what a beautiful morning. But what Rodgers and Hammerstein did was, between the C and the F chord, they added an F suspended 4th, or an F suspended chord. Sounds like this. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Isn't that lovely? And can you still hear that kind of amen? And if you want to have a go at that, C chord, I'm sure you already know. The F suspended 4th is kind of slightly awkward one. It's barring the 2 strings nearest the floor of the 1st fret, and then reaching over to the 3rd fret of the G string. So 3, 0, 1, 1 from nose to toes. And then you can just replace this 3rd one with your 2nd finger for an F. And notice that it creates this note going from this B flat to this A. And that's what creates that resolution. So, oh, what a beautiful morning. Okay, you get that really lovely resolution and movement. Now something else is happening really interestingly here, and this is another function of the suspended chord. It can make a chord that you shouldn't really resolve to feel like a resolution. So do you remember when we've looked at this in some other contexts, in other videos, that it's the one chord in every key where you feel at most rest. So you play along C, F, G7. It's that C where you feel most rested. Now an F, which is the fourth chord of a scale in the key of C, it has a certain amount of resolution, but it's not got the same resolution as the one chord. And if I just play C to F, oh what a beautiful morning, it kind of doesn't feel wholly resolved. But by adding that suspended chord in front of it, because I have this lovely note going down, it adds to the resolution. Oh, what a beautiful morning. See how it adds to the sense of resolution. That's another reason for playing suspended chords in pieces, which is really lovely. Now, there's one more use of the suspended chords that I want to cover before the end of this video. And the greatest example of this that I can think of is Keith Richards. He absolutely adored suspended chords. If you think of a lot of Rolling Stones pieces, that's the start of Start Me Up, isn't it? Start me up, start me. Can't remember the rest of it, but yeah, it's using a C and a C suspended chord. And so adding that suspended chord can be like adding a bit of salt and pepper to a meal. If you have a long C note, which just goes on and on for ages, sometimes a really nice way to just add a bit of variety without adding too much too much distraction is just by putting your finger on and off that F note. We could do it now. If you play a C, notice how it just adds a bit of change without adding too much. We could add the add the suspended second note in by adding a D. A bit more of an unusual sound, that one, hence why it's not used so much. It's used quite a lot in rock and roll as well, so you know, adding that kind of a point of interest. So if you find yourself in a piece of music, whether it be something you've written or a cover, and you think, oh gosh, I'm on this chord for a long time, just try adding that bit of sugar and spice or salt and pepper by adding that F note. A really common one, and this comes back to a lot of guitarists. Now this shape, if you make this shape that we all know and love as a G major shape, if you make that exact shape on the bottom three strings of a guitar, we have a D chord, they would call it. And a really common thing to do in classical guitar, something called a mordant, which is where you have four notes happening very quickly all together at the same time, something like this. I try and really highlight that bottom string. And if I do it slow down, what you would hear is, okay. And that's a really common thing. Loads of folk guitarists used to use this when they stayed on a D on guitar, but a G for us. What they used to do is add their little finger here to the fourth fret of the A string. Whoops, no they didn't. They added it to the third fret of the A string. Sorry folks. Okay, now in the key of G, G, A, B, C, the fourth note is C. And that note that we're adding with our little finger was a C. So by playing this G and adding that C, we're turning it into a suspended fourth. And then when we take away this finger, I don't know if you can see that, it's hard to show, isn't it? But if you take away the finger off the A string, instead of playing a B, we're playing an A. And if we count up from G, G, A, A is the second note in the scale. So we have G suspended to G, G sus4. Oh, I keep putting it in the wrong place, sorry. G sus4, third fret. I don't know why I'm doing that. G, G sus2, G, G sus4, G, G sus2. So try that. Play a G for a bit. And I'll quite often do that. If I'm strumming along at a uke club or something and it's a song that stays on G for a long time, it's a really nice one to add in and experiment with. In the next video, I'm going to deal with augmented chords, which are similar but have a slightly different sound and are built in a very similar but different way. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.